All right, buckle up, everybody. We're going deep today.
Diving right in.
Yeah, a deep dive into some pretty fascinating stuff he sent over.
Mm.
This is all about Chris Butler,
Oh, yeah.
also known as
Jagad Guru Siddheswara Pananda Paramahamsa.
it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
Yeah, you've given us a lot here. We're talking like books, articles, even some forum discussions online.
Yeah, some social media stuff too, and the obligatory Wikipedia.
Of course, got to have that Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So, where do we even begin? I guess our mission here, if we had to like sum it up, is to really try to figure out this Chris Butler guy.
Yeah. Try to understand what he teaches, the organizations he's involved with. It's a lot.
Yeah, Science of Identity Foundation, we've got QNet, and then there's some pretty serious allegations too.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is how this all ties into spirituality, but also maybe potentially some cult dynamics and even politics.
Yeah, wow. We've got a lot to unpack here.
Lots to unpack.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. With Butler himself, we've got his early interest in Eastern spirituality.
Right, yeah. And ultimately, of course, that leads to him founding the Science of Identity Foundation, or SIF.
Okay, SIF, got it.
But, one thing that stuck out to me from those Facebook forum discussions is that his own father, who was a doctor, apparently labeled him a narcissistic psychopath.
Whoa, okay, hold on a second. That's a pretty intense accusation, especially coming from your own family.
Right. But we do have to think about the source. It's just a forum.
Exactly, and who knows, maybe there's another side to that story, or maybe not. I guess we got to keep that in mind as we go forward.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is key.
All right. So there's this one, turning point in his life that seems really important. It's when he abandons sannyasa, which is like a renounced ascetic order, right?
That's right, yeah. He gives up that lifestyle. But here's the thing. He keeps the title Paramahamsa and his sannyasa name.
So he's like leaving the order but holding on to the titles. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. Why give it up but keep those labels? It definitely makes you question things.
Like, what's going on here?
Exactly. It makes you wonder about his motivations, Like, what's the real story?
Okay, so we've got Butler's background. Let's shift gears and talk about SIF, the Science of Identity Foundation. What do they actually believe?
Well, the basic teachings are all about yoga, meditation, and reaching a state of, pure consciousness. They emphasize peace and self-discovery, living a life of purpose.
It's pretty standard, Ida.
Yeah, but then we've got all these sources saying they're actually more like a cult.
Oh, right, yeah.
There are all these claims about them controlling people's lives, isolating them from family and friends, taking their money.
Like serious cult stuff.
Serious stuff. Oh, and there's this one detail from the forums that I found really disturbing. Apparently, they use this tactic where they provoke people who leave into criticizing the group. And then they use that criticism as proof that the person is, negative and dangerous.
Wow, that's manipulative.
It really is.
So, okay, we've got this potential cult thing happening. And then it gets even crazier because one of the sources ties Butler to Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah, the politics.
Yeah, the former congresswoman even ran for president. Turns out she was raised in SEF, and her family is still involved.
Right, and some sources suggest that SEF may have even helped fund her campaigns.
That makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, what is the extent of their involvement in politics? It's kind of unnerving.
Yeah, definitely raises some eyebrows.
I know.
And now we've got another layer to this whole thing with Joseph Bismarck, also known as Japa Das.
Yeah, he's high up in SEF, right?
Right. But he's also a co-founder of QNet. It's
Yeah.
a multi-level marketing company, one of those things.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. QNet has been accused of being a straight-up pyramid scheme.
Wait, hold on. So this spiritual leader is involved with a potential financial scam.
Yeah, pretty much.
That just seems so wrong.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two things, like spirituality and scamming people?
Right, and that's what we're going to explore. How do Bismarck's spiritual teachings line up with what QNet is accused of doing? It doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's like two completely different worlds colliding. And it all circles back to this question of, who can we trust? How do we know if someone is genuinely trying to help us or if they're just using us?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Definitely is.
And we're going to try to find some answers.
Okay, I'm ready for more.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've got QNet, and we're talking about some really serious allegations here, like a pyramid scheme and fraud and financial exploitation.
Yeah, this is not just like speculation or rumors either. Multiple countries have actually investigated QNet for this stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not hard to find stories of people who got involved and ended up losing a lot of money, like their life savings. It's pretty devastating.
So it's legit then.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And that's what makes Bismarck's involvement so troubling. You've got this guy who's supposed to be all about spirituality and helping people, but then he's also involved with this company that's accused of, taking advantage of people.
It's like a huge disconnect. Like, how do those two things even exist in the same person?
Exactly. It's hard to wrap your head around it. It makes you question everything, Like, what are his true motivations? Is it really about spirituality, or is it more about money and power?
And there's that quote from Bismarck, the one about the power of multiplication. Like, that's straight from the pyramid scheme playbook.
Oh, yeah, it's classic. And it's so jarring when you think about it in the context of his spiritual teachings. It's like, on one hand, he's talking about enlightenment and higher consciousness. And then on the other hand, he's promoting the system that's all about recruiting people and making money.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
You
It's like,
know,
which one is it? Is he a spiritual leader or a businessman?
maybe both,
Maybe.
but it's definitely a contradiction.
It is. So this whole situation, it makes me think about, like, how do we even know who to trust when it comes to spirituality? There are so many people out there claiming to have the answers, and it's hard to tell who's genuine and who's not.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And there are no easy answers. But one of the sources you gave me actually had some interesting thoughts on this. It's that CultSan deteriorated spiritual systems.pdf document.
Oh, right. Yeah. What did it say?
Well, it talks about how spiritual teachings can sometimes become like fossilized, like they lose their original meaning and intent, and they just become about following rules and dogma.
That makes sense. It's like the teachings become more important than the actual people.
Yeah, exactly. And the document also talks about how sometimes people are drawn to spiritual groups for the wrong reasons. Like they might be looking for a sense of belonging or community or even just a way to cope with their problem.
Right. They're not actually seeking spiritual growth. They're just trying to fill a void.
Yeah, and that's okay, but it's important to be honest with yourself about why you're drawn to a particular group or leader. Like, what are you really hoping to get out of it?
Okay. So we've got fossilized teachings and people with the wrong motivations. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. Remember how we were talking about Butler leaving the sannyasa order but keeping his title and name? Well, I was looking through that Keeping Faith with Katuri.pdf thing, and it turns out there's a specific term for people who leave the order. They're called tyagis.
Tigers.
Tyagis. And guess what? They're not supposed to have disciples, like at all. They're supposed to focus on their own personal spiritual practice.
Wait, so Butler's technically not even supposed to be acting as a guru anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, and it makes you wonder if his followers even know about this. Like, are they aware that he's not supposed to be teaching or guiding them?
That's a good question. And it raises even more concerns about transparency. Like,
hmm
are they being upfront with their members about all of this?
It's hard to say,
Yeah,
but it definitely seems like there's a lot that's not being said.
this is getting pretty deep. Like, every time we peel back another layer, we find something even more questionable. I'm starting to feel like I'm in a conspiracy thriller or something.
I know, right? It's crazy.
But we've got to keep digging. There's still so much more to uncover.
It's
This is making me think about all this stuff we see online about self-improvement and, like, finding yourself and all that spirituality.
Yeah.
It can get really confusing, can't it? Like, who do you even trust?
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to just like blindly follow someone who sounds convincing, especially if they present themselves as an expert or, spiritual leader.
Yeah, like, you want to believe them,
I get it. But it's so important to think critically, question things, do your own research.
So what's the big takeaway here after this whole deep dive into Chris Butler, SF, and QNet?
Well, the main thing is discernment. Not all spiritual leaders are the real deal. Some might be genuinely trying to help, but others might have different motives.
Like what?
Oh, power, money, control, things like that.
It's kind of like investing. You wouldn't just hand over your money to anyone, right?
Right.
You'd want to check them out first, see if they're legit.
Yeah. Exactly. And it should be the same with spiritual organizations and leaders. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, look for red flags, and most importantly, trust your gut.
Like if something feels off.
Yeah, don't ignore that feeling. It could be your intuition trying to tell you something.
Okay, so we've learned a lot today. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Makes you wonder, though, about all those other groups out there. The ones we haven't even heard of.
Yeah, it definitely raises some bigger questions. Like, do we need more transparency in these organizations? Especially the ones that have a lot of influence, whether it's political or financial.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
Mhm.
for someone listening to this right now, someone who's maybe interested in spirituality or self-improvement, what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, remember you have the power to choose. Choose who you trust, what you believe, but also be informed. Do your research. Look for red flags. Things like leaders who try to control every aspect of your life, groups that isolate you from your family and friends, demands for unquestioning loyalty, financial pressure. Those are all big warning signs.
Right, and we've seen those play out in our deep dive today.
Exactly. And remember, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut. It's usually right.
That's good advice. We've given everyone a lot to think about today.
We have. It's a lot to process.
This whole deep dive has been intense, but it's also been really important, I think.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it's about empowering people to make their own choices, to find their own path.
And to stay safe along the way.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today, folks. See you next time.